Hundreds of visitors were at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich to witness the transit of Venus, a major astronomical event. This was the first time in over 100 years that the planet Venus had passed directly between the Earth and the Sun. Experts say it's one of the rarest astronomical events there is, certainly one of the rarest predictable events. They happen twice a century at best. The last time it happened, Queen Victoria was on the throne. Electric light had only just been invented. The world had changed absolutely dramatically in that time. This event is so special because of its rarity. Despite the fact that most of the scientific research using planets in terms of time and measuring distance was completed in the 17th and 18th century, today's observation may help find life in space. Using special glasses or items they'd made or bought, visitors had come from all over the world to get a glimpse of the transit of Venus. One man had planned coming to Greenwich from Michigan in the US 10 years before to ensure he didn't miss the event. With hundreds attending, it shows the continuing interest there is in the science of space. NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope has found that a period of violent collisions in the early stages of a solar system may last for hundreds of millions of years, far longer than science expected. The Space Telescope observes infrared light, which allows it to peer through dense clouds of dust that obscure much of the universe. These clouds don't just contain the building blocks of planets, they've also been shown to contain the ingredients of life itself, including water and basic organic molecules. It's theorized these molecules may be carried on comets and be the basis for new worlds. Romania was one step closer to space travel after the successful launch of a prototype rocket with a new type of engine which would one day send man to the stars. One day earlier, the 14 members of ARCA, or the Association of Romanian Cosmology and Aeronautics, watched anxiously as the demonstrator 2B engines failed to start because of a faulty electrical line.
Pe ce eu? Stai și care-i problema?
On the night before, engineers claimed they were able to fix the problem in just 15 minutes. And with all systems go and deteriorating weather, they decided to go ahead with the launch. After releasing a small puff of smoke on the launch pad, the rocket soared just 1,700 meters towards space before falling to Earth. Preliminary results say the engine performed properly. ARCA built the demonstrator 2B using funds solely from sponsors and their own pockets, and hoped to eventually use its reusable engine to compete for the X Prize for human spaceflight. The engine, fueled by enriched hydrogen peroxide, will eventually power a human-carrying spacecraft called the Horizon. The project ran relatively smoothly, marred only by the explosion of a test engine earlier on, which blew out windows in neighbouring buildings, but injured none. The Swift spacecraft is specifically designed to examine gamma-ray bursts, or GRBs, huge cosmic explosions that light up at random across the universe. GRBs release the energy of billions upon billions of stars like our Sun in a matter of seconds, or even less. As its name suggests, the Swift probe was built to home in quickly on these elusive explosions before they burned out. Scientists suspect that gamma-ray bursts are created when massive stars implode on themselves and become black holes. At the heart of the NASA spacecraft are two British-designed and British-built telescopes that peer into the heart of GRBs. Analysis of the energy released during and after a gamma-ray burst could reveal new information about the life and death of stars and the evolution of the universe itself. The Swift probe will also relay information and the precise location of emerging GRBs to ground-based telescopes. It will direct international attention to these mysterious and all-powerful bursts of energy that could shed light on creation itself. Since Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth in 1961, transforming a dream into reality, the exploration of space has occupied the minds of people from all walks of life. Will there be planetary colonies, and how will they work? Is space tourism a possibility? These are all questions that we are wrestling with. Talks run the gamut of current and future events happening in the world of space exploration. And issues raised in open forums cover Mercury probes, private space flights, moon colonization, and the possibility of life on Mars. And with private companies launching into the atmosphere, it seems the space race is once again in full swing. What do you do when you want to explore hundreds, perhaps thousands of miles of barren Martian terrain and send the information back to Earth? You let the wind provide the power. This is the latest in Mars rovers, the tumbleweed. And the idea works. NASA knows this because it recently tested a prototype tumbleweed rover on the Antarctic plateau. The trial run was designed to test not just the idea that the rover could travel by wind power alone, but also whether it could do its job, send back information. During its 8-day journey across the ice, the Tumbleweed rover used a global satellite network to send information on its position, the surrounding air temperature, pressure, humidity, and light intensity to a ground station at JPL in California. The rover kept itself warm in 33 below temperatures by self-heating from its internal electronics and an internal air pump. It travelled 70 kilometres in all at an average speed of 6 kilometres an hour, slower than scientists would have liked because of the unusually light winds. The rover's design has many benefits. It can act as a parachute while descending through an atmosphere, an airbag on landing, and ultimately as an unmanned vehicle equipped with a package of scientific instruments. The Tumbleweed rover is based on ideas going back to the 1970s. Several scientists have investigated the concept. It's been tested in desert environments too, where it is envisaged that it could one day search for subsurface water on arid planets. As long as there's an atmosphere, the Tumbleweed rover can ride the winds, possibly for years, exploring thousands of square kilometres as it rolls along. It may not be too long then before explorers revert to one of humankind's oldest modes of locomotion, the power of the wind. It's been the dream of science fiction writers and space scientists alike. A silver sail to catch the light of the sun. Propelled by the pressure of photons, a craft with such a sail could navigate the reaches of our solar system, or beyond, perhaps even to the nearest stars. In orbit, the unmanned Cosmos 1 spacecraft deploys an experimental solar sail with 8 triangular blades made from mylar film. Mission planners calculate that the pressure of sunlight on the 15-metre-long blades will be enough to change the speed of the 100-kilogram spacecraft in its orbit around the Earth. Trimming the sail by changing the angle of the blades to the sun will let flight controllers raise or lower the orbit. And if all goes to plan, the prototype solar sailor could gain enough height to stay in orbit forever. Cosmos 1 will be launched from a Russian Navy submarine. The Volna rocket system is part of a program to reuse missiles from decommissioned nuclear weapons. The spacecraft and its sail are being built under contract in Russia. The Planetary Society was co-founded by the space scientist and broadcaster Carl Sagan, who died in 1996. Sagan's media company, Cosmos Studios, sponsored the mission and pays for most of it. 2 operation centers, one in California and one in Moscow, coordinates the month-long flight. And a network of ground stations monitor the spacecraft and let flight controllers adjust the sails by remote control. One day, sun jammers like these may fulfill the wish of the poet, who asked only for a tall ship and a star to steer her by. Ariane 5 is carrying the largest commercial telecommunications payload ever orbited. The mission is crucial to the future of Europe's space program. The 1990s was a boom time for launching telecommunications satellites. The market now suffers from overcapacity, and Ariane Space, the commercial operator for the European Space Agency, felt the squeeze. To turn its fortunes around, it's important to increase the payload capacity and reduce costs. The cryogenic upper stage was designed to enable Ariane 5 to launch 2 satellites with a combined weight of 10 tons. On its doomed maiden double launch in 2002, Ariane 5 was carrying a television satellite and the French government's research satellite. But all was lost 3 minutes after liftoff after an in-flight explosion. Once they stabilized the configuration of Ariane 5 with a new ECA version, they will have to agree on what it costs to make it work. The system will be trialled using dummy payloads, satellites of scientific institutes, or student initiatives that cannot afford a commercial launch. Ariane 5, though, is not just for the market. It is an essential tool for Europe to maintain its independent access to space. Ariane 5 is used to carry freight to the International Space Station with the automated transfer vehicle. And in 2011, the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope will be launched from French Guiana on Ariane 5. Taking off into history, Spaceship One's successful attempt to become the first privately funded space vehicle. But what's the prize? Is it the kudos? Is it $10 million? Or is it more? Every other of the 434 people who have gone into space were able to do so because a government paid for the flight. But Spaceship One pilot Mike Melville was the first to make space a private domain. And it was funding from an information technology empire which made the designer's dream possible. It was Microsoft's co-founder Paul Allen who came up with the 20 or so millions to build Burt Rutan's design for Spaceship One. And they used techniques familiar to every entrepreneur. NASA has a budget of $15 billion a year and spends about $440 million on each space shuttle flight. It costs between 20 and 30 million to get Spaceship One into space, a 20th of the price. Cheaper flights mean more flights and the growing possibility that some of the rest of us will get a chance to go. On this historic day, the Spaceship One team gave us a lot to think about.
The Royal Observatory in Greenwich, always popular with visitors to Britain, held centre stage during National Astronomy Week. Observatory staff organised events and attractions with something of interest for everyone. There were getting to know astronomy sessions, solar observing, and a planetarium simulating night skies. But most eyes were set firmly on Mars. Down the hill at the Maritime Museum, an exhibition links Britain's Beagle 2 mission to Mars with the voyage of the first Beagle, a ship, and its famous passenger, Charles Darwin. Beagle 2 was set for a Christmas Day landing on Mars, and like Darwin's early 19th century voyage, it would then go on to survey and map the unknown and look for forms of life. The Earth's closest encounter with Mars for 60,000 years occurred in 2003. Away from the spotlight, observatory staff went about achieving one of their main objectives, introducing children and adults to the stars, the planets, and the night sky. If the children's fascination in making star wheels is any measure, interest in astronomy is well and truly alive.
Scientists think this terrain is pretty close to what humans will encounter when they step out onto the Martian surface. The region is remote, rocky, and there's little if any water. It's the Flinders Ranges in South Australia, and there's not much here apart from a few astronauts. The site has been chosen by the Mars Society, an international body of scientists, to create and test the equipment that will one day be used by humans to explore the Red Planet. Natalie Cutler is a mechatronic engineer, a spacesuit designer. She's part of a team that's developing a spacesuit for the Martian explorers made of Lycra, unlike anything used in space before. The idea of using elastic is to duplicate Earth-like atmospheric pressure. Without protection, blood vessels would simply rupture and astronauts would bleed to death. The make-believe astronauts spend up to 2 hours at a time in the suits. And the verdict? So far, so good. But there's another problem apart from pressure, and that's solar radiation. Fatih Kaerawa works with NASA finding ways to protect against solar radiation. He's come to the Flinders Ranges to research what life on another planet may be like when there's little protection from the sun.
It's a few different area, but actually the soil is pretty serious.
NASA interplanetary scientist Jennifer Heldman is running tests on something that is pivotal to the success of a manned Mars mission: water. Explorers will have to find a source of water on Mars. They couldn't possibly take enough with them. Perhaps the greatest threat to exploring astronauts may not be physical. Being a 2.5-year journey away from Earth could impose enormous stress on minds. Relationships will be placed under great pressure. Phil Crins is studying how astronauts might cope with isolation. The scientists in the desert are away from home for only a month. The Mars expeditioners will be out of reach for a minimum of 5 years. At the end of the day, if the crew can't get along and the crew can't function together, a mission would be over. All the money spent on engineering and science would be wasted if people can't carry out their mission properly. The Mars Society is planning to build a space research centre at the site. When it's built, scientists will live and work here for months, replicating conditions in a Mars settlement. They've already constructed equivalent labs like this in the United States and Canada. But is a human colony on Mars really a possibility?
It's being hailed as the hottest media tool since the laptop. For a total cost of approximately £23,000, the Talking Head satellite video phone is being used by journalists competing to be the first to beam home the latest news from remote areas. The Talking Head was developed by 7E Communications, a small business on the outskirts of London employing only 12 people. Demand for the device has grown considerably since the tragic events of September 11. Prior to this, the company website had an average of 10 hits per day. On the 12th of September, the number of hits rocketed to 35,000. CNN was the first newsroom to use the technology. In the competitive world of TV news, speed is everything. Executive news producer Mike McCarthy said that contrary to increasing pressure on journalists to file stories more quickly, the new technology has liberated his reporters. The packs are 5 pounds in weight, as opposed to the normal 2 tons for a satellite truck. It gives the viewer a chance to see the real footage and be given context and a scale to the story.